Hello, welcome to my take on being harsh with others. So I have to look at my computer screen because I don't have this printed out or anything. So we're looking at this Colossians 3. And it looks like an Old Testament version. Alright, I'll have to see if there's more information about that. Okay, alright, I've got more than one. So I'm trying to read the screen, so this time I'm like looking at the Colossian verses, actually. It says 3:21 through 22. There's, this side there's a reference to 19 through 25 and 18 through 22. And mostly in these, focusing on not being harsh with people. Alright. In general, I had to do like 3 looks at this. This time, just Copilot gave me summaries. I'm not actually looking at the actual web page. Anyway, it's like Bible Gateway and Bible Hub are some of the links that got brought up. Let me check. There's a Leviticus one. Oh, that's only printed out. That was Bible Hub. Okay. That's Leviticus 25:43. That's like the cross reference of this. Mostly it seems to be focusing on the do not be harsh with your children, slaves, your wife. So we're working on this because some religious people think it's okay to be harsh with their women when the Bible clearly says not to. Okay. I guess I shouldn't swear in this script. Definitely our political leader has said something nasty about how to treat women. And that's all I'm going to say. You can look it up. It has a swear word in. I try not to swear on these videos and stuff. So, I mean, I can't control what I do in real life, but in these I'm trying to be polite and not, cursed, even though it's like the one word that he said really isn't in the Bible anyway, but I'm not going to mention it. Anyway, let's look at these verses. First, I had this is the AI telling me a summary, but I'm going to, try to say it in my own words. This one was titled Meaning of Do Not Be Harsh with Your Children, Not Harsh with Slaves. They say this part comes from Colossians 3:21 through 22 NIV, and I will read. Oh, they brought up the verse from Bible Gateway though. So this is from that site, BibleGateway.com. Oh, this side one, I made a mistake. It says Christianity. I guess it's Christianity.com for the 3:18 through 22. This is NIV though. It's not, the King James version or anything, so some people might be offended, but whatever. Well, really the most accurate verse is going to be from the oldest one we have, called the Greek New Testament. Some people also think that that there was an Aramaic version. But in my case, I can't confirm an Aramaic version, so I'm going to say the Greek version we have a copy of, we have printed out. It's ancient Greek, and that's what the Bible was written in. So you have to keep in mind that when you're translating, sometimes the words that you make them out to be aren't actually the meaning or context that are in the verses. So people who are teaching you their thought on it might not be understanding that, okay? But anyway, that's why I make these videos. And I'm going to read the Bible verse now. Fathers, do not embitter their children, or they will become discouraged. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when the eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. When we think about slaves back then, it wasn't like one in the United States. Although there was rumors that some masters were better than others, that they actually treated their slaves a little bit with more respect than some of the really rotten cases, okay? But I'm going to tell you, this says not to be harsh with them. And plus, they call it servants in some Bible verses, not slaves. Which means they are simply, it's like bond service, they call it. Sometimes they sold themselves into slavery because they couldn't pay their bills. And sometimes it was foreign prisoners, because the land would keep the prisoners of war and make them do work as servants. Okay? And maybe there's some people who actually were grabbed from off of some street and put into slavery. But anyway, the context is that there's supposed to be a little bit better versions of this. Alright. So this states a historical context, which I mentioned. Greek douloi or doulos referred to people in a state of bondservants. That's I mentioned already. Individuals were owned or bound to another person for labor or service. Okay? And it was a common structure in the ancient world. This is not something that they did to be cruel to other people. Okay? It says Roman and Greco-Roman. It does say positive and negative contexts. The New Testament, it applied to those in position of subordination, whether due to birth, economic status, or circumstance. And then it says children were recipients of parental discipline, but you have to avoid bitterness or harshness that would discourage them, like, extreme punishments, unfair punishments. That's what I'm pretty sure it's referencing, because it shouldn't be cruel to children, but you have to teach them some respect for others, do the right things. And it says slaves are as dressed as those under the authority of their masters. They want to serve with sincerity and reverence, and not with resentment or harshness. And then there was something, and then it reads, the not harsh with slaves part is not a command to be kind to all people in all situations, but a specific instruction to avoid abusive or resentful behavior. Probably in both ways, like the masters should not harm their slaves, the slaves should not be cruel to their masters. Although there was saying something in Peter that that people should be nice to harsh masters, but I think I would go with this one where they're supposed to not be harsh toward their slaves as the most important stuff to be read, because if they're beating the crap out of you, like whipping you and stuff, yeah, they can't expect that kind of respect, When they have a modern application. Yeah, many Christian interpreters today see slaves as a metaphor for anyone in a position of subordination. Employees, students, or people in a dependent role. And serve with humility and respect, avoiding harshness or bitterness. The focus is on mutual respect and love in relationships, regardless of where they are in life, social status, whatever. But anyway, I'm just trying to let you know that it's just, yes, you're an authority, but no, you don't have to be in harsh authority. You don't have to be a dictator. You don't have to be cruel to someone, or, even as an employer, fire them over something minor, or something that could be worked out by talking or whatever. I mean, a lot of them do get to the extreme and don't think about, well, this is another human being. I just care that they broke a rule. But you shouldn't be like that. You got to understand it's impossible to always be perfect. And okay, it also has a takeaway. Avoid harshness or bitterness in specific relational contexts, especially towards those under your authority, or to serve with reverence for God. Okay, now I'm going to close that one. And I'm going to go to the one also that says Colossians 3:19. There's Bible Hub and Bible Gateway. The Colossians is referring to the Colossians 3:19 through 25 NIV there. And there's a link to Bible Hub. What does it mean to not be harsh in the context of marriage? Which you could probably read on your own. And we'll just stick to what this AI brought up here. The most important part of this is it does say submit, but I think it's to submit yourself to a person who is good to you. Or, I know there's other verses that say something about trying to be good to them so they will start being good to you. But I think if they don't learn by a certain time, you can start thinking about leaving, because you can't just let yourself be beat up constantly by someone or abused. So if you have to leave, you have to leave. Don't worry about it. That person was, just consider that person never existing, and it never happened. Because you shouldn't have to stay to get beat up. That's not Christian, to beat someone up or abuse them. Anyway, let's go back to this, because I keep getting distracted by my own thoughts. 3:19, the verse says, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Greek word paikrono, or krons, as I think that O is actually an S. It looks like it might be O, or it might be the accented O that looks like that's actually an S at the end of the word. So, but anyway, that word is to make bitter or to irritate in a relational sense. It pictures a spirit that nurtures resentment speaks kind of in a sharp tone or uses authority to hurt, wound, okay? It's not just about avoiding physical violence, regarding tone, attitude, and actions so that they do not sour a spouse's spirit. I'm going to point out something because I thought of it. That ending where I just kind of tried to say it the way it is, but kind of spun it my own way a little bit. That also applies to your employees. You do not want to be harsh in tone, attitude, and actions. They seem to think it's okay, but it's not right. Okay? It's not right. If you're a Christian, you know that, and you are not mean to people just because they ask questions or question what you're doing to them. You just explain it so they can understand. That's a priority I have when I say something about employers anywhere online. They don't think, they just do, and instead of guarding their attitude or the way they talk to people, whether it's abusive or not, they don't do it, okay? And that's the problem I have with them. If they could just be kind instead of cruel, it would be a much better thing. Okay, so let's go to the marriage part, specific to marriage. It's addressed to husbands, the love your wife part, not the submission, but I think it promotes an air of mutual submission. It's not to be cruel to people. So the husbands should love their wives and avoid harshness. Not a command to be gentle with all people, but you can't be kind with someone who's completely cruel and nasty. You have to, punish them sometimes, put them in jail, things like that. This is a direct exhortation within the marriage context. I'm not saying that what I said before is wrong, but I think the word not being harsh applies mutually to all sorts of relationships, except for something where you have to punish someone because they're cruel or whatever, or whatever is wrong with them. So it's not about slaves or wives in general. 322 is separate instructions to servants. Wives, call for wives to submit to their husbands. Well, maybe I should explain this submission thing, since it is mutual submission in a relationship. All right. Mutual submission. He is called to love his wife, but she is under his care. As I've tried to point out in the Corinthians, or was it Corinthians? I think it was Corinthians. Anyway, the general thing about submit to your husbands and husbands love your wife. For no man is, abusive toward his own body and so on. The point is he's supposed to be the caretaker, and you're not supposed to go running off trying to be in other relationships. He's your husband, and it's not for him to be cruel and order you about. It's better for him to ask what your thoughts are, and you have input. He doesn't just blanket order you, okay? Okay. Skip over that. There's just a little bit I don't need. Love as a foundation. Love your wives, meaning gentleness flows from sacrificial Christ-like love. Avoid bitterness. It can come from pride, unmet expectations, or unresolved conflicts. And there's a reference to spiritual fruit. Includes gentleness, Galatians 5:22-23. It says, do not be harsh with your children, not harsh with slaves. Is not a direct quote from Colossians 3:19. But the verse itself is about husbands and wives. Okay, well that's this one. So I read you the part that was important about slaves and children. Okay. And now we go to the cross-reference from the Old Testament. Leviticus 25:43. But this is only not to rule harshly over slaves. It's 25:43 says, commands, you are not to rule over them harshly, but you shall fear the Lord your God. From the NIV from Bible Hub. It's a verse part of a broader set of laws in Leviticus 39 through 55 that regulate the treatment of slaves in Israelite society. In the ancient Near East, slavery was common, and Israelite law sought to regulate it. Addresses the treatment of fellow Israelites that have become slaves due to poverty. It distinguishes between foreign slaves from other nations who could be owned and passed on as property, fellow Israelites who are to be treated with justice and compassion. Well, yeah. Well, I'm assuming this is trying to be the Old Testament's version, and it says, I can't read the Israelite term. It says lamara, I think, but can be translated as ruthlessly, with severity, or with rigor. It avoids cruelty, oppression, or unjust punishment. Not a blanket ban on all forms of discipline. Call to exercise authority with fairness, respect, and compassion. Use fear your God, or something like, it looks like Yurat Elohim, which means reverence, awe, and obedience to God's authority, not fear in the terror sense. Well, that's a good thing to mention. Fearing the Lord doesn't mean you have to you have to act like you're afraid of Him, but a deep respect that motivates your behavior. Okay. And it says broader biblical prisons, not prisons, principles. Colossians 4:1, masters should provide slaves for what is right and fair, knowing they have a master in heaven. Ephesians 6:9, treat slaves justly, since God is impartial. Reinforced leadership and authority should be exercised with humility and fairness. While slavery as an institution is abolished, the principle remains relevant. Leadership, those in authority, should govern with gentleness, fairness, and respect. Justice, all people, regardless of status, deserve dignity and fair treatment. And compassion, recognizing the inherent worth of every person as God's creation. Now, I don't think they meant for them to treat the foreign prisoners harshly either. I mean, not abusively. I mean, they probably had to discipline them, yes, but I don't think they were, being really cruel. It's possible that some of the worst ones were. But anyway, this is not just about all that. What it is I'm calling everyone to understand that being cruel to others just because you're in charge or you think you're the boss or in a leadership position, you shouldn't be cruel to others. I don't care what leader you are. It is not disrespect to tell you to be kind and decent to people instead of deciding, oh, some people are unworthy of that. And we have current leaders in charge that think that you can treat everyone like crap or in a certain social situation or, a certain money situation that we can tell them they're lazy and don't do nothing as a blanket reference instead of valuing each person for what they are. And it's really ridiculous that people can just use blanket statements and be cruel and trash talk and act like that people aren't trying and, basically torture them mentally and make them, can cause depression, suicides, and all that stuff. I shouldn't say that. For YouTube, I better say off themselves because of harsh treatment. Okay? So that you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, just saying, try to be kind. When you're in authority, it doesn't mean you have to be evil to your employees or cruel or act like you're going to fire them all the time. Or if you're a husband, you don't have to act like your wife is your property. You can throw her around or whatever you want to do. And you shouldn't be cruel to your children and be overly strict, overly mean. You have to understand that kindness and love come into it, and that should be part of being a Christian. Okay? That's why there's forgiveness and mercy and love for your neighbor, yourself, and even for your enemy. I mean, sometimes your enemy needs to repent before you can get that close enough to care about him. But, what I'm trying to say is just don't be overly harsh. Okay? Thank you. Bye. See you next time.